Hi everyone, welcome back to week 6 of CVT class. Last week you learned how to identify and elicit automatic thoughts. So since last week we're focusing on the central process of cognitive intervention that takes place within CBT. So this week you will learn what to do with those automatic thoughts that you identified. So you're gonna learn some techniques that you can use to help your clients to evaluate their automatic thoughts and then change some unhelpful negative automatic thoughts to more helpful and adaptive automatic thoughts. So let's begin. Once you identify some automatic thoughts that are negative and unhelpful, you would typically engage your client in changing those thoughts. But there are several reasons that you would consider not to address certain kind of automatic thoughts. First of all, if your clients are not currently distressed by those thoughts, and although the thoughts might be negative and unhelpful, it doesn't really interfere with your client's daily functioning. Then because the goal of CBT is not to just completely restructure your client's way of thinking, the ultimate goal is actually to help your clients feel better and function in a way that's adaptable. So if those thoughts don't really contribute to your client's clinical symptom, then it's not really necessary for you to address those thoughts. And also maybe there are certain triggering situations that your clients tend to have this specific automatic thoughts, and that situation has been like completely resolved, and then it's unlikely that your clients will actually get into that kind of situation. Or the same triggering situation might happen again, but you and your client work together and developed a list of coping strategies. So your clients have a good solution when the same problem reoccurs. So in that case, you don't necessarily have to address those automatic thoughts. Some of the important things for you to remember when helping your clients to evaluate their automatic thoughts is not to challenge a client's automatic thoughts directly, because until you get enough context, you don't know for sure if your client thoughts are truly distorted. There's almost always, there's some truth to what your clients believe in, and there is a reason why your clients are thinking that way. Because of that, if you're directly challenging your client's automatic thoughts, your clients might feel invalidated. And then also it violates the principle of collaborative empiricism that puts really high priority in eliciting clients' active participation and really putting your clients in the driver's seat. So instead of challenging clients' thoughts directly, you want to ask questions. Remember the Socratic questioning that you learned last week. Instead of telling your clients, oh, I think that's distorted, I think that's not really helpful, you ask guided questions so that your clients can arrive in a conclusion that some of the thoughts that they're having is not true and it's not really helpful. But you never really want to draw that conclusion yourself. Like, you want to help and guide your clients to arrive at that conclusion themselves. So let's talk about some specific techniques and skills that you can use to evaluate and modify automatic thoughts. The first thing is questioning, Socratic questioning, like I mentioned just now. So there are specific ways that you can use Socratic questioning to help your clients to evaluate their thoughts. First set of Socratic questions that you can ask. It's a question related to the validity of your client's automatic thoughts. So, for example, what's the evidence that supports this idea? And what is the evidence against this idea? And is there an alternative explanation or viewpoint? So these are kind of the core things that you're going to ask, but you can make this a lot more conversational and more friendly to your clients. So let's say that one of your clients' automatic thoughts were like, I'm stupid. So you can ask, so what makes you think that, this thought, I'm stupid, is true? And do you think that there were some other times that you didn't act stupid? Were there times that you felt kind of you did smart things to do? Or do you think, instead of kind of thinking that you were stupid, maybe you didn't have enough information beforehand? So there's a different way you can ask these same questions, but the core kind of meaning of the questions that you're asking is really the validity of the automatic thoughts that your client have. Another set of Socratic questions that you can ask is decatastrophization. So let's say that there is a client with performance anxiety. There is a presentation coming up, and your client is really, really fearful that the client is going to make stupid mistake. So you can ask these questions. So what is the worst that could happen? Let's say that you do make mistake. And then what would be the worst about that? What do you think will happen? Do you think people will laugh at you? Do you think you will lose control like completely? And if that happened, do you think you can cope with that situation? So let's say that some people kind of laughed. Do you think you can cope with that? Is some people laughing? I'm sure that a lot of people would actually laugh with you instead of laugh at you. But let's say that people laugh. Do you think you have enough coping strategies to deal with that situation? And what would be the best thing that could happen? Let's say that you do make mistake, and it might not always lead to the worst outcome that you might think, right? Because as you know, a lot of like important discoveries in science always come from like mistake, something unexpected. So maybe you're making mistake would actually lead people into kind of thinking more creatively, and then people might actually be able to find like better solutions to the problems that you were talking about. So there is a possibility that you making mistake would not be really the end of the world, right? And so we've talked about some of the worst thing, and then we talked about the best thing. So like in real life, in a kind of regular kind of ordinary kind of situation, what do you think would be the most realistic outcome? So again, the goal of CBT is not to change, to really always push your client to think positively about things. It's just helping your clients to get used to think about these different options in terms of their conclusion. And there could be more rational kind of adaptive way of thinking. Next set of questions is regarding the utility of your client's automatic thoughts. So there might be some truth to what you believe in, but what do you think is the effects of you continuing to believe that you're a complete failure, if that's your client's automatic thoughts? And let's say that, starting from tomorrow, like some miracle like happened, you just somehow completely change the way you think about yourself, and then all of a sudden you really believe in that you are really competent, and you are very useful, and you are very trustworthy. Imagine that you're a person who believes in those things about yourself. How do you think it will change the way you do things, the way you interact with other people? So what will be the effects of changing the way you think about yourself? So that's really focusing on the utility of your client's automatic thoughts. Another type of questions that you can ask is geared toward helping your clients create some distance between themselves and their thoughts. So you can ask, what would I tell my friend if he or she were in the same situation? So when we have like other people's problems, a lot of times we actually have solutions. So we can tell other people um, some other perspectives, but when it's our problems, sometimes we're just so kind of into that problems, it's hard for us to kind of separate ourselves from those situations and those negative thoughts. So creating distance between those thoughts and situation and the client themselves will actually help them to think of some like alternative perspectives and looking at the situation. And after you engage your clients in considering a lot of different alternatives, you could always help your clients to come up with the conclusion throughout that process by asking, so what do you think you should do now? You've considered all these different perspectives. What do you think will be the most helpful, most realistic way of thinking with regard to this triggering situation? So taking that problem solving approach can be helpful. And you want to make sure that you're asking these questions to assess the outcome of engaging in this kind of process. So how much do you believe it now? So if let's say that your clients believed in the fact that they were like complete failure, if they were like 100% sure that they were a failure in the beginning, but after you went through this process, if your client said that, I guess right now I believe in that like 60% or 70%, then that's a progress that you can point out to your clients, which can be a source of motivation. Again, change is really slow and gradual process. So, pointing out those small progress to your clients will really make sure that your clients are engaged in this process of changing in an ongoing basis. In addition to Socratic questioning, there are some skills and tools that you can utilize to help your clients to evaluate and modify their automatic thoughts. So there's a thought change records. There is identifying cognitive distortion, decatastrophizing, sort of talked about this, reattribution, cognitive rehearsal, coping cards. So I'm going to present this one by one in more detail. So one of the tools that's most frequently used to help your client modify their automatic thoughts is called thought change record. So this is actually very similar to the automatic thought record that you used to do your homework to identify your automatic thoughts. The difference is that automatic thought record was only has like 3 columns, which is why it's called 3-column technique. But thought change record has 7 columns, which is why it's called 7-column techniques. So as you can see in here, there is these 3 columns that you have in the automatic thought record. There is a situation box, there is feelings or reactions, not just emotional but bodily sensation or behaviors, and then there's this automatic thoughts box, right? And then in addition to these 3 columns, there's a column where you can document some facts that support unhelpful thought. And the next column, you write what would be some evidence that's against the unhelpful thought you have. And then in the next column, you will write down some of the alternative, more realistic and balanced perspective, balanced thoughts that you can have about that same situation. And then you re-rate your feelings at the end to kind of assess how this process produced some different outcomes. So as you can remember, so these are all the questions that if you actually interact in real time with your client, you can just use Socratic questioning to get this done. Or, this is just a more systematic way of gathering this information. And also you can actually give this as homework for your clients to complete throughout the week. So thought change record helps clients to recognize automatic thoughts, just as the automatic thought record does. But also it helps clients to work on changing their thoughts and then observe some positive outcomes associated with those changes. And also rate degree of emotion associated with the automatic thoughts. And then also rate the degree of assurance that the automatic thoughts are true. So like I was saying in the beginning, if your clients believed in their automatic thoughts, maybe like 100% in the beginning, after they went through all these things, they actually, their level of assurance might have gone down. And as a result of that, maybe your client doesn't feel as strong as those negative emotions of, that are associated with those automatic thoughts compared to when your clients believed in those thoughts like 100%. So in the process of, filling out this thought change record, so you are actually getting into this process of generating rational alternatives, right? So you're actually questioning the validity of your client's automatic thoughts and the utility of it, and then kind of look for some other ways of looking at the situations. When you do this kind of process of generating rational alternatives, you want to explore different perspectives, and then try to create this kind of spirit of, collaboratively like brainstorming instead of, coming up with like quick yes but, just foster this flexibility in thinking that there could be some other ways of seeing things. And then one way that's helpful to do this is to kind of remind your clients that, there were times that they were not depressed, right? So they actually might see things this way because, they are very depressed like currently. And then a lot of times when you're depressed, that your thoughts are kind of shaped by the clinical depression. It's part of their symptoms, right? So you can kind of ask, there were times that, when you were not depressed or less depressed than this time. So if you were in that situation, do you think that you would actually see things in the same way? Or, if you were not really depressed as you are like currently, do you think you might have actually interpreted the situation a little differently? And also ask others for opinion. So if they have some people they trust, you can kind of ask your clients to identify a person that they would actually ask what they think about the situation. And in doing that, you will actually want to ask like how much your client can trust this person, because let's say that if your clients ask that question like to maybe family members who have not been really supportive, and then if they don't really trust that person's perspective, I mean obviously it's not going to make that much of a difference. And then what are the risks in asking this person for feedback? Again, depending on their relationship, depending on the level of trust, maybe that person might not give an answer that you would actually hoped. And then you can kind of problem solve. What if that person says like something totally different? And then how could you cope if you get a disappointing response? So, if that person responds in a very different way, do you think you can still cope with that? So these are some of the probing questions that you want to ask in identifying another person who could actually help your clients to generate rational alternatives. So, like I have like repeatedly emphasized, CBT is not the same as the part of like positive thinking. It's not just, oh, let's think positively, but you're really helping your clients to think about more rational, reasonable alternatives. For low functioning clients and those who just like writing, maybe clients who are not motivated or equipped to benefit from thought records, you can actually use this worksheet, Test Your Thoughts worksheet, and then just walk through in real time in a session to get this done. So this is the Testing Your Thoughts worksheet. It has the same components. What is the situation, and then what am I thinking? So assessing the automatic thoughts, also assessing the degree of assurance that your clients have about that thought. So you could rate it a little, medium, a lot. And then the reactions, like how does the thought make me feel, and the intensity of the feeling. And then all this process of generating alternatives. So clients don't have to do it themselves. They don't have to deal with the worksheet, but you can engage your clients to do this in session. Another strategy that you can use to help your client evaluate and modify their unhelpful automatic thoughts is to use the list of cognitive distortions. So cognitive distortions is a consistent error that people tend to make in their thinking. And often there is this systematic negative bias in play when processing information, particularly those who are suffering from psychiatric conditions. Just having the knowledge of these cognitive distortions helps your clients to become more aware of the pattern of thinking that they engage frequently. So the list of cognitive distortions is actually developed by Beck. Dr. Beck found that there are some typical distorted thinking pattern that's found across a lot of people with psychiatric conditions, and then they try to define what those are and provide some examples. So you can actually use this list of cognitive distortions in psychoeducation. So you can explain what those are, and then do some activities to identify some of the cognitive distortions that your clients tend to get into more frequently. I uploaded the list of common cognitive distortions to Canvas, so you can print it and then use it in your session. Let's quickly go through some of the common cognitive distortions that are found in clients with psychiatric condition. First of all or nothing thinking. You've heard the term black and white mentality, polarized, absolutistic, dichotomous thinking. These all refer to the same thing. So it's a judgment about oneself or personal experience or others are placed into one of the two categories. So everything's all bad or all good. Either it's complete failure or complete success, completely flawed or absolutely perfect. You will actually see a lot of these cognitive distortions in action for those who tend to be perfectionist. So, people who has that perfectionist tendency, really discount everything unless things are perfect. So, for example, if I'm not a total success, I'm a failure. Unless you have like perfect score, then you just completely screwed. So that kind of thinking really negatively contributes to your client's emotional status. Another one is selective abstraction, also called ignoring the evidence or a mental filter. It's when you have a situation, a conclusion is drawn after looking at only a small portion of available information. So there are some other data that supports like different perspective of looking at things, but that data is completely screened out or ignored. So despite all this like evidence that supports like otherwise, your clients still conclude focusing on just like a small portion of data available. So for example, like because I got one low rating on my evaluation, which also contains several high ratings, it means I'm doing a lousy job. So these people tend to have some kind of filter that filter out all this like positive information about themselves, and then it just it doesn't register in their mind. The other type of data don't register. Another common cognitive distortion is overgeneralization, which has a literal meaning that a conclusion is made about one or more isolated incidents, and that is extended illogically to cover broad areas of functioning. So, for example, because I felt uncomfortable at the meeting, I don't have what it takes to make friends. Maybe there are some incidents that you were doing okay, but based on this like one or two kind of experience that you had, you're drawing this conclusion that overgeneralize how you tend to behave in certain situations. Another cognitive distortion often goes together: magnification and minimization. The significance of an attribute, event, or sensation is exaggerated or minimizes. And oftentimes, clients with depression or other psychiatric condition, they tend to magnify negative aspects while minimizing positive aspect. So, for example, getting a mediocre evaluation proves how inadequate I am. Getting high marks doesn't mean I'm smart. So you kind of really highlight some negative aspect of yourself while you're really kind of ignoring some positive side of yourself. Another thing, a personalization, like people say, don't take things personal. But this is like one of the common cognitive distortions. When external events are related to oneself, when there's a little evidence for doing so, excessive responsibility or blame is taken for negative events. So repairman was curt to me because I did something wrong. So, there's kind of no relationship between what the repairman did and what you did, but you're sort of drawing that connection between these two unrelated incidents. Once you identify cognitive distortions to work on, there are a couple of techniques that you can use to help your client to deal with those cognitive distortions. We talked about decatastrophizing for clients who tend to get into this cognitive distortion of catastrophization. Clients who always tend to think of the worst case scenario. So by decatastrophizing, you can help your client work on ways to cope with the fear situation in case it does come true. So if you remember those questions, like what's the worst that could happen? If it happened, how could I cope? What's the best that could happen? And what's the most realistic outcome? So these questions can help your clients to deal with catastrophization. And also, there is a coping card that you can use. Basically, you're helping your clients to identify some of those unhelpful negative thoughts, and then write down helpful and more adaptive thoughts that can counter against that negative thoughts. So coping card is used to help your clients to practice key CBT intervention. And oftentimes you would just use an index card, and then have your clients to write down those thoughts. So whenever your clients get into that triggering situation, if they just keep it close to them and then just can reach those index cards, and then practice using those cognitive coping skills. So that's the rationale of using coping cards. Here's some example. Just basically write down all the cognitive and behavioral coping skills that you would use to use it as a reminder for your clients to practice those skills outside of there. Another technique that you can use to help your clients deal with cognitive distortions is reattribution. It's basically you're helping clients brainstorm about a variety of different possible contributions to negative outcomes to break free from tunnel vision. So tunnel vision is another cognitive distortion commonly found. Some clients were like constantly feeling guilty about what happened to them or what happened to their family members. By using this attribution charts, there might be some responsibility on your end, but that could only count, for 20%. But there are a lot of other factors that simultaneously contributed to this negative outcome. So you may have contributed a little bit, but it's really not entirely your fault. So this is one technique you can use. Another technique is called the cognitive rehearsal. Basically, you're anticipating a triggering situation, and then anticipating some negative automatic thoughts that's going to pop up in that triggering situation, and then giving your clients a chance to practice using those cognitive coping skills. So you will engage your clients in thinking through a situation in advance and identify possible automatic thoughts and behaviors that your clients are going to do. And then, you've already identified some of more alternative, more rational alternatives. And then you want to rehearse using those alternative thinking to cope with the situation. So you will encourage your clients to do this as homework after you give chance your clients to practice it in real time in the session with you. Another technique that's called behavior experiment is used when discussing the validity of your client's automatic thoughts and to test out your client's predictions in real time. So for example, going back to the example of a client with performance anxiety, let's say that your client has an upcoming presentation, and your client predicts that when the client starts speaking, the client will shake and people will notice that, and then people will the moment will be really awkward. So write out all those predictions, and then do an experiment. Maybe you could do a role play with your client and record that scene so that you and your client go back and watch that together. Or if you're assigning this as a homework, you can actually have your client experiment with that situation. really, notice what's happening, how people are responding, and then write down the outcomes. And then have your clients summarize what they learned out of that experience. And then, hopefully they will see some changes in terms of the degree of assurance your client had about the client's predictions. After you go through all these skills to help your clients to evaluate their negative automatic thoughts and better respond to those negative automatic thoughts, you want to make sure that your clients remember what happened in session to help your clients to draw a conclusion by asking these questions such as like, what do you conclude about all this? Can you summarize what we just talked about? What do you want to remember? What would be important for you to remind yourself of this week? What do you want to do this week? So let's summarize. Last week, you learned some skills that you can use to identify automatic thoughts. And once you identify those automatic thoughts and determine that those automatic thoughts are negative and unhelpful and generally interfere with your client's daily functioning, then you can use some skills to help your clients to evaluate and modify those thoughts to a more helpful and adaptive way of thinking. So those skills included Socratic questioning, thought change records, identifying cognitive distortions. And after you identify those cognitive distortions, you could use decatastrophizing, reattribution, cognitive rehearsal, coping cards, all these skills to help your clients to modify their thoughts. And also you can use behavior experiments to give your clients time to practice thinking in more adaptive ways in real time in your session. And you can also assign that as a homework. So that was all. When you come back for a Zoom class next time, you'll watch a video therapists using these skills and do a role play with your partner and receive feedback from the group. So hope you have a great week, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.